I just, first of all, I want to mention that all of this information is on atlasofcaregiving.com. All of the instructions, these videos, how-to guides of how to draw your own care map. And really, literally, all you need is a piece of paper, a pencil, and an eraser. You don't need any art skills. I drew mine numerous times and with stick people. and and I learned a lot personally from my own care map, especially, actually, when I talk about Atlas of Care Map being in our book, The Unexpected Journey of Caring, I introduce it as an important tool in caregiving when your loved one is going through a transition. So, for example, if you are a parent of a child with a disability turning 18, there is a massive, massive change in available supports and in life. Everything in life changes at age 18 for people with disabilities and their families. But also, if you have a senior parent who is moving into assisted living from their own home, for example, these are massive transitions. And all of a sudden, everything that you once knew about who's in your circle of care, who you can depend on, who is responsible for what, that changes dramatically and overnight. So the care map exercise is so, so helpful in understanding what's going on, who's doing what, and asking yourself some of these questions. So, Zachary, do you want to take like the first three and kind of reflect on those?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak at it from a variety of perspectives, and I love these. The care map, as you say, Don, is so helpful because it's the equivalent of what you would do in an organization, and having you wouldn't work with others without any understanding of where your responsibilities begin and end, and who's doing what, and how are they coordinating. For me, the communication part, I mean, I was kind of drafted into that role of sharing out as surgeries and procedures and changes in medical status occurred. And so I knew I was the point person for that. And that became quite troublesome for me because this is aging me, Donna. This was years ago where really our best tool was through telephone. And very, not everyone was on email at that time. So you end up saying the same thing 100 different times and it becomes quite exhausting. So knowing that that was my role, I could help better understand how my siblings who were all over the country what was their role? What were they in charge with, or what was being done and not being done? And, when I was caring for my mom with my dad, being able to answer this question of, who was indispensable. I mean, it really came down to he and I, and we were lucky enough to have each other. But if not for one of us, the most basic of my mom's needs could not have been met. And whether that was pain management, weekends for cancer patients becomes, especially on hospice, becomes challenging if you're not able to know that a weekend might mean serious and significant pain for 2 days that's unaddressed. So I wish, Donna, I had the care map when I was going through that caregiving situation, because you feel the weight of the burden when you can't figure out what those roles are, because you become everything and you can't untangle one from the other.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. And, I'm imagining myself being you as you're telling that story, because that's a story of everyone here, I bet, But also this question of, is everyone aware of each other? That's something that we very, very rarely stop and think about. In fact, we very rarely stop and think about any of these questions with respect to our caregiving, which, as you mentioned, Zachary, is actually a challenge of project management. It really is. It's like managing a small business. And if, as you said, if you're in a business and you are the CEO, which is what we are as a CEO of our loved one with care needs, or the co-CEO with the loved one, we don't think this way. We imagine, because we're called informal caregivers, driven by love, that these project management challenges don't exist, but they do. And I think part of the reason that we feel that oftentimes we do get lost in it, and we do feel as though we're being buffeted in every direction, any direction, by forces that we're not in control of, is because people aren't aware of each other. So that can lead to, your sister or your brother calling and saying, I was supposed to get mom's groceries this weekend, but I can't because I'm going on a camping trip. And people aren't aware of you. And you go, what? That is not fair. And so in terms of helping everyone be aware of what each other is doing, a picture can really help. But also, it really helps with service providers. So if you live in Canada, you're likely to be eligible for provincial home help in the way of personal support workers or home nursing. And if that's the case, a conversation with your home care coordinator is going to be helpful if you share this care map and say, this is who's who, but this is what they're doing or not doing. Sometimes you can use a care map very effectively for advocating, but also for planning who could replace me or who could replace my sister.
Hey, Donna, to that question that you're talking about, this notion of, is Kathy in the chat box asks, what if there are no others helping other than the PSWs? What do you do? How do you make sense of that in the care map?
Yeah, we're going to talk in just a minute about community and what some of the hidden assets of community are, where you can, the care map in, who was it who made that comment, Zachary? Kathy. So in this case, Kathy, where you don't, you're quite alone in caregiving, and that's not an unusual situation either. This is, again, a good advocacy tool to bring to your case manager, to the physicians who may be in touch in your circle of care, your GP, any specialists. Show them this care map and how alone you are, and they might have some ideas for additional supports and services, particularly mental health, particularly during COVID, where we're all so much more isolated. And if you're isolated to begin with, it's going to be very rough on your mental health. So
what you're talking about right now, Donna, is really resonating. We have several comments here flowing in about, people anticipating where you're going and what you're talking about in terms of kind of leveraging community resources and possibilities. And then Aurora's talking about her mother being in a situation and she's kind of stuck with PSW. And so there's a variety of factors here. People are really looking forward to getting some of the slides, I think, after the presentation. And Suzanne wants to know, is there a video to pass on to family and friends about how they can support?
Oh, that's interesting. Let me give that some thought. I don't have one included in this presentation, but I I did write a blog post that got published widely at one point. Zachary, can you look it up and see if you can find the URL for
Yeah.
6 ways communities can support caregivers?
Yeah, and I'll post that. And also, you know, Donna, one of the advantages you always talk about with the care map is that that's one bridge, is you can share your care map with your family and
Yes.
or others as a way to talk about, so they can help see and understand your situation rather than use, you know, oh, that's Donna, you know, she's the mom of Nicholas, of course that's what she does, rather than, hey, let me sit down and share with you what's going on, and to pinpoint some gaps that they may be able to help. Now, as we talked about in the last 2 weeks, it depends on how receptive and open your family is to hearing and understanding that. I think that that could be an avenue.
That's true. And one way in would be to say, I'm making my care map. Um, and it also, the information that I'm seeking is, who are you looking after? I would like to expand my understanding of what you are doing when you're not helping me look after mom. What are your other caring responsibilities? So can you fill in your part of the care map? And we're making it wider and wider and bigger and bigger. And then you can have a conversation about their responsibilities outside of mom, for example. But you can also look, this is a constant seeking of possibility. Well, you know, I bring my daughter to gymnastics. I bring her from 9, and I pick her up at 3 every Saturday, for example. And then you could think, well, gymnastics is not that far from mom. Would you be able to drop in on mom after you've dropped your daughter off? Because that's one of your caring responsibilities that you might be able, that's seeking a crack of light, of possibility in how people can contribute. And you get there by understanding what it is they're doing in their caring life too. So you could ask them, just not, look at this picture, you've got to help me more. It's not that. It's, I'm trying to understand what everybody's doing in their caregiving lives here. Can you help me fill in the picture?
A couple comments I want to share with you, Donna, really going at what you're talking about here. And for everyone, I just posted the article you referred to, Donna, in terms of 6 ways that communities can help caregivers that Donna wrote. From Sheena, Donna, she asks, how do you approach family, siblings, for help and caring when they have their own lives and not feeling guilty for asking siblings to help with the care of their sibling?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's, you know, we're going to talk in a minute about matching, and this is going to be a very, very big theme in next week's presentation. I don't want to jump ahead too much, but fundamentally, it's about matching talents, skills, preferences, and availability up with the needs of you and the person you're caring for. So you're seeking, you begin to take on the role of matchmaker for filling in the gaps of what it is that you need based on other people's skills, preferences. So you're not going to ask your brother who flunked math every year to help balance your mother's bank account. You know, you're looking for their skills, their availability. That's why you want to ask them about their part of your care map. What are you doing? And as you begin to understand their lives better, you'll be able to be a better matchmaker for what it is that you need.
Suzanne offered a similar question, Donna, right at what you're saying, and I know that you're previewing next week as well. And it's this notion of resistance within family to doing and helping that burden of care that you say oftentimes falls on the caregiver alone. Suzanne asks or says, I've just shared my weekly calendar and schedule with my family, and they just tell me I'm doing too much, but they don't offer to help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I think in terms of when people are not stepping forward to help, it's a science and an art to um, leverage people's assistance in a circle of care. So one of the things that I can't stress enough is that what are people doing anyway? What do they like to do? What can they do? I always think of a story uh, from my friend Liz O'Donnell, who wrote a very good book called Working Daughter. And Liz talked about her own care for her parents, who were both sick at the same time. And her husband then got cancer, and she was really, really, I mean, it was ridiculous. No human can possibly do everything, but she was trying to do everything because her brother was totally not able to do many of the tasks that needed to be done. She was so angry at her brother for not stepping up, not seeing what needed to be done. Would you, and she would be very specific, would you please, stay with mom on next Saturday because, and bring her to the doctor because I can't. I've got 20 other things to do and 2 kids and 2 sick parents, etc. And he would say, no, I've got a squash game, And she was extremely angry. Then she would visit her mother, and her mother would say, "Oh, your brother came to visit. I had the best time. He had me laughing. Why can't you make me laugh like that?" Well, that's salt in the wound, right? But what Liz realized is that her brother could do what she couldn't do, which is sit down and have a light and fun conversation with her mother. Liz was so stressed, and she was trying to get stuff done, head down, nose to the grindstone. And she realized that she maybe could ask her brother just to hang out and have a laugh with no other agenda than that. And then she began to realize that that was respite. And she began to think she needed to forgive her brother. So I think sometimes you need to forgive people or stop expecting things of them that they cannot or will not give, and look outside of the family for the help that you need.
I think that's a great point, Donna, because Kathy also speaks to this, how hard it is when you ask someone you care about for help and they say no. And to what you're saying, that's our first place to go, and for support, those closest to us, those who could respond to our life pre-caregiving, and yet we find ourselves in their caregiving role, and they may in fact say no for a variety of reasons. And it seems a betrayal, doesn't it, Donna, that you would go outside your original networks of people that you thought would be there for you. But as you're saying, sometimes that requires asking those who we wouldn't have thought about or even conceived as willing and able to help, who may not be involved in the family at all at this point.